Welcome to the Copper State Marching Podcast, sponsored by the Arizona Marching Band Association, AZMBA. My name is Martin Hebda, the AZMBA Director of Education and Outreach.
I'm Matt Kozacek, the AZMBA president. The AZMBA Copper State podcast was created to bring together the Arizona marching band community and to connect, educate, and entertain those involved in this wonderful activity.
Matt, welcome to summer.
I know it's so hot. It's already so warm. It's crazy.
That's good, but you had graduation. You had a daughter that graduated.
Yes. Oh my goodness. As you know, like you got to experience this. It's just the time flies by, but it was so special to be able to watch that and, just kind of see her finish off her time and, brought a lot of tears, obviously. So.
Right on, right on. Well, we're going to jump right into our episode here. Today, we're going to be discussing electronics and sound design, and it can be a really stressful thing for a lot of directors, especially if you haven't had a lot of experience doing it. So, we're going to be bringing on Zach Whittier and Claire Thorpe Cootie to discuss some of their best practices. And Matt, so the first thing I want to do is, do you have any electronic nightmares and or anything that you wish to discuss if it's not too painful?
Well, I think the biggest nightmare that we've probably all faced is that spinning wheel of death when it comes to getting on the field and you're trying to set up all of your sound and you have your computer spinning and you're like, what do we do? What do we do? So I think it'll be really great to hear from these two about here's some practical ways. Here's some things that you can do to prevent that from happening, or here's some suggestions about how to set up your front ensemble in a way that's going to be that's going to minimize or reduce those opportunities for there to be failure.
Yeah, and I feel more stress usually going into the winter season than I do in the fall. I feel like there's a little bit a better pad in the fall, but the winter, I'm sweating bullets. And anytime I'm watching another group, I'm just waiting to hear them do the ding 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 ding, of the keyboard working. Because you never want a group to have to face that. And I know in the winter season, there was one year RCC had to like just take everything apart and they went into finals seated like 15th or something, just barely
Yeah.
squeaked in because they needed to get their sound. That was a while ago, but yeah, never anything that you want to see. We had a mix up, I think it was 2023, we were at championships. There was a miskey of something in our sample that was kind of like a vocal, like rap sort of thing, got all mixed up. And I don't know, when something like that happens and I'm just on the sideline, your eyes get big and it just feels like it takes 3 minutes to recover. And then when you like listen to it back, it was like 10 seconds, but it just like takes forever. So there's definitely some scares in there.
Yeah, the other thing I'm really looking forward to is there's so much that is becoming a part of the activity where you have these sound effects and you have these samples that you have like a riser where while your ensemble is playing, like there's this electronic sound that is boosting the I guess the effect moment, right? And like building into that hit, and then you've got the sub drops. It's like, how do you do that? Like, how do you put those in without hiring, someone to do it for you? Like, where can you go to get that? So I think that's going to be really valuable information.
Yeah, I agree. And before we bring in Zach and Claire, let's get a real quick word from all of our sponsors. AZMBA would like to thank our sponsors: Arizona Cardinals Football Club, The Band Shop, Bravgo Media, Encore Gifts, Forte Athletics, Instrumental Music Center, Mac Pack, Milano's Music, Music Celebrations International, Music for All, Pieces of Flair, Scoreboard Fundraising, Show Dots, Tide Dry Cleaners, and Yamaha. Thank you for supporting AZMBA. We would like to welcome Zach Whittier and Claire Thorpe Cootie to the podcast. Thank you both so much for coming on.
Howdy, thank you for having us.
Hello, thank you.
And I think it'd be great to start with both of you maybe telling us a little bit about your background within the activity and maybe some of the different experiences you had with electronics and sound design.
Claire, would you like to start?
Sure. I think I'm the one with a shorter list there. So I don't have necessarily any formal training in audio production and engineering things. I started out in when I went to drum corps, doing front ensemble and asking so many questions the whole time. It was my first experience in a front ensemble was when I was in drum corps, and I'd never seen this whole side of things. And I had so many really, really patient sound techs that sat there and explained things to me and let me watch as they did stuff, and just immediately was super interested. My mom is a computer science person, and so I grew up really like tinkering with stuff, but other than that, like hadn't had a ton of background. And then when I came in working with Casa Grande Union, that kind of became part of the job description was learning how to do stuff there. And I was lucky that our person at the time, Thomas Meyer, also answered all my questions and showed me how to do stuff and really kind of walked me through things. And since then, it's kind of been diving in head first. So I feel like it's been a lot of just learning as I go and figuring stuff out, and really enjoyed everything from making sound design for Union for the past few years, as well as kind of running our audio program in terms of the front ensemble electronics as well.
And you went to there was a sound design workshop we had in Tucson at one point, didn't you?
Yes, yes. Mark Hodge hosted one at Ironwood Ridge a couple years back, and that was, and I think I really think of that as like a big like crux in when I feel like I was able to I learned more about what I didn't know, I think, and that gave me a lot of information to jump off from. In college, I did do, we had crosstalk down at U of A, the electronic percussion ensemble, and that also helped me a lot with learning kind of some of the lingo of like the how to plugging things in, getting systems, what the different kind of systems were. We worked a lot with Ableton there, which now I don't do as much with because it's a little heavier than what I need typically with what we've done at Union. But that also was a great experience for being able to learn in kind of a classroom setting.
Hello, I'm Zach. I know, right? Great transition. My time in the audio world kind of was sprung on me by force, essentially. So I marched starting back in 2008 in drum corps when electronics were just kind of starting. From there, I went to Academy in 2010 where we really started to get some things in there. Aged out in 2012 with the front ensemble. While I was teaching down in Tucson, I had a band director approach me, just say, "Hey, you've done drum corps. I liked what Phantom Regiment did last summer. Can you do that for me?" And I kind of just asked, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, we've got a synth and we've got a guitar amp. And we would just want to make some sound." So that's where I started. Was simple, just plug and play. I believe it was a Yamaha motif. Now I'm in my first year with the Academy Drum and Bugle Corps as the audio caption head, going into year 5 with the drum corps on the audio team. I also work with Pulse Percussion as a front ensemble tech, and I'm also the director of percussion at Sandra Day O'Connor, as well as the audio engineer and one of the audio designers.
So, one of the things that I'm curious about, and I think we can just kind of dive right in, is some of the levels that we can offer to the listeners. Like, we want to kind of start with a little bit of like a basic approach, and then, like you were saying, like with the you have a synth and you have a guitar amp. You know, what can you do with that? And then we'll kind of go from there and like get a little bit more advanced as we go along because we know that there's some that have a lot and some that might just have a few pieces of equipment. So let's say you're a director that's never used electronics before in your setup. What are some just like ground zero basic things that you would suggest for those programs?
My first bit of advice is always ask for help. That's rule number one. Ask for help. Even as band directors, when we don't know something about a woodwind instrument or a brass instrument, we always ask our friends. Same thing applies here.
I agree wholeheartedly. And it's so funny you mentioned, Zach, the like, a synth plugged into a guitar amp. Because when I was first teching with Canyon del Oro down in Tucson, also while I was still in college, I hadn't had to run a full program yet. And director said the same thing of like, hey, we've got a keyboard, we've got a guitar amp. What can we do here? And that was kind of that my first steps there is figuring out how to make some sounds. And I feel like that is a lot of people's first step, is just we know we want to have some sort of electronics, we want some sort of synthesizer. Even if you're not ready for a full, maybe like you don't have the program budget to buy some sort of computer to run things. There are plenty of hardware synths out there that can make a decent amount of sounds, or like a Roland sample pad, or even I've seen people use an iPad to trigger samples and things. That if you have some form of speaker, you can put some amount of sound out. And then I think especially everyone sees like the huge setups and thinks, oh my god, like I'm gonna have to spend 8 grand on a mixer and this much on this. But I mean, we had two like old marimbas mic'd with one little mic each running into an analog mixer, and I think that's a great first step for a lot of people. Is just if you have some sort of little analog mixing board, you can find them now all over the place, being sold used or like secondhand or from other programs and things. You probably have one sitting in the back of your theater tech shop, if you have one at the high school, that no one is using for anything, that can be used to preset some levels and then run that into a speaker. That especially if you have a smaller band, like if you're running a slightly smaller program, you don't want huge giant amplification at that point either. You just want something that's going to mix in with what you have. So going like little piece by piece, and I think especially getting uh, investment pieces as you buy them, and things that you can step up are really helpful. So starting off with, what microphones do we own? If we ask the theater department, do they have any old random microphones sitting around? How do those sound? That I think a lot of directors think, okay, I don't know how to use this, but we all have ears. We listen to instruments all day long. We know what good and bad sounds like. And so you can really guide yourself by your ears at first, and then yeah, just ask for help. Like I feel like we're all a bunch of giant nerds who really really want to get our hands into things sometimes. Like we can't see a train wreck happening and not want to interfere. So if you reach out to people and say like, "Hey, we don't have the budget to bring someone out right now, but we really need help," you will find people who are willing to come out there.
I'm glad you brought up
100%.
the iPad, because that's what we used at Campo when I first got there. We didn't have a sound system, whatever. And do you happen to have any recommendations for it? Because I know like on the iPad we had a sampling program that we like just put some sounds in, and I just don't remember, like, are there any apps that you would recommend that people can put some sounds in to their to their iPads to just kind of get a basic level of sampling going on?
I personally use Sample, SAMPL. Um, I've used it with probably 8 or 9 different high schools at this point, who just only had an iPhone or only had an iPad. Um, and we were able just to load everything on there. You can go in, dial in all the sounds just on the phone, and go from there. Super easy.
Mhm.
Then if you want a hardware option of something simple early on, like you're not ready for a full DTX or Drumcat or something, the Roland sample pads are pretty indestructible. I think they last forever and they're pretty simple to use. They're not like crazy learning curve in terms of loading sounds into them and then running a cable out of them. And I think they make a great, like if you want buttons to push, a great first step there.
And I'm glad that you talked about the Roland because that is something that I see everywhere. And I mean, we've even had it before. I could see a director getting a lot of anxiety saying, okay, how do I load samples on there? Is there what's just a quick, hey, try and do this or look here for the information to do it? What is your suggestion there?
I feel like the queen of halfway through a rehearsal. If realize I don't know how to do something with a one of the machines we have of some kind, I will look up that instruction manual so fast. Every single one of these things, whether it's DTX, whether it's your mixing board, whether it's your amp, everything has an instruction manual somewhere online that you can pull up. And that's oftentimes my first place is like, okay, we lost the box, we lost the manual somewhere, but I can find this online. And it usually has pretty specific, I won't say like totally foolproof, but like in terms of like, I forget every 2 years when we have to redo it of, wait, what's the exact thing I have to press on our DTX in order to load this thing in or to find this sample or this setting. And I'm almost always able to track it down in the manual somewhere. That, and there's a variety for, especially if you're going with one of the popular options of like the Roland DTX, things like that. If you have had that problem, it's very likely someone else has had that problem too. So whether it's like searching for your problem, it sounds silly, plus the word Reddit, or YouTube has a ton of tutorials on a lot of these popular options for exactly watching somebody load all of these things in.
And just to bounce off of that as well, there's a great community online on Facebook specifically The Marching Arts audio discussion page. I'd like to tag that page specifically. If you are a band director and are just starting in audio, or you are a drum corps caption head and know what audio is, you need to be in this page because everybody is there to help everybody get better at sound specifically, in the marching arts realm specifically.
Marching
I
Arts audio discussion page, you said on Facebook?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
will put that in the description.
I have them queued up in my
Yeah.
shout outs because genuinely, I like the nicest community of people in the world. If you search my name, you'll find not one but two times where I'm getting electrocuted and can't figure out why. And people are so fast to jump in with solutions, like volunteering their time, like, hey, message me, I'll talk you through this. Like, hey, let's hop on a phone call. Just the kindest, most helpful, smartest community I feel like I have ever seen.
The one thing I'll suggest about that, because I joined that group a while ago and I learned my lesson really quick, is to use the search button first. Because I asked a question in there about what kind of mic would you use for a flute, blah, blah. And the first comment was like, please search this. It's been asked like 10,000 times. And so, if you join that page, use the little search function and search like flute miking or something like that, and you'll find tons of conversation about it. But yeah, I 100% agree that that page is very, very helpful.
So, and just to kind of finish up this first topic, we were talking to the director that's, just want to get started. I don't know what to do. And it kind of seems like you brought up maybe pool the resources, see what you have, whether it be mics, different amplification, whether it be electronics or keyboards, and see what you can do. And let's say that they do that and they get, okay, we're able to get some mics on a keyboard. Maybe we have a mic on a stand for a soloist and they start right there. What might be the next step? They're like, okay, so I just kind of use some of these things. One thing that I was thinking about, I was like, do you have any specific mic suggestions? Whether it be, okay, now I'm going to mic a marimba, or now I'm going to mic a soloist, or we don't even have to get into the field mics yet because that's a little bit more advanced. We can get to that later. But any things on that?
I'm sure we're about to say the exact same thing. If you're just starting out and you're not looking to buy like the crazy Audio Technicas yet, which I'll pass over to Zach to talk about those, but I'm a believer in the SM57. You can put that mic on almost anything and it's going to sound pretty decent. Obviously, there are some use cases where you're going to want to go for a more specific microphone of some kind. But in terms of, I need to buy 5 mics and I don't know exactly what I'm going to use them for, and I want to be able to trade them out between maybe a wind soloist and a keyboard and something else. And also, I want my kids to be able to drop it twice and it's going to be okay. I SM57's I feel like the best like budget option for that one.
I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to update one thing on there, what you said, Claire. You said that a kid could drop that once or twice and it'll be fine. I'm going to go ahead and update that. That thing can be run over by a semi truck and still be fine.
Yeah, that's they definitely can break, and if they can, they're very. I've repaired my first microphones this season and resoldering things that they kind of come apart, and it's 2 wires that go right back in. Yeah, it's a workhorse, and I like the. Oh man, it's the what are the Audio Technica everyone loves? Is it the 2035 or the 2020?
35.
And they're beautiful. They sound great, but they definitely are less droppable, and there's a lot more that can go wrong in there, and they're expensive. I'll also say it's not necessarily worth going any cheaper than the 57. That there are some other brands out there. There are some knockoffs. You might have the perfect one, in which case, drop it in those comments. But otherwise, there are some knockoffs that just aren't quite the same and that start to cut some corners. So they're around $100 a microphone, and really, you're getting a lot for a long time for with what you have.
That's great information. I'm sure all of our listeners are going to appreciate just that piece right there as they're looking for their purchases. So you've got your mics and you've got the cables and all that stuff. What would be the next step for someone as they're trying to develop their program? They need all these mics to go into a.
I think we're going to need a mixer.
There it is.
And that's I mentioned earlier that idea of like an analog mixer. That's when for the longest time, that was the only mixer I knew how to use. It's exactly what you're thinking of. If you picture, all the knobs and dials and things, every single thing you can do on there has an individual knob assigned to it. You can't hook up the iPad to it. You can't like control it from far away, but you can set it and forget it. You can make it sound good in rehearsal. The thing to remember with analog mixers is that every single knob is right there, and they're pretty and fun and shiny, and people love to come mess with them. If you're overwhelmed by seeing everything, you can set most things on that to just a neutral position and be okay. That there are little EQ things you can do in there, but if you're not sure about that at the very, very beginning, again, you're just starting out, there's no one in there to help you at this moment, just setting it all pretty neutral in terms of EQ or mixing effects or things like that, and then just going with what you hear. If you do have a mixing that or an analog mixer that's going out on the field, tape and labels and sharpies are your friend. Once you get it sounding good, putting tape down and saying, set this thing to this line, taping a line of like, hey, this dial's going to go right here, because there have been those times where it either gets put in the box and gets messed around, some kid goes and sees it, someone's little brother runs up while they're in the lot and starts twiddling with stuff, and then you have to go, wait, what did this look like? That, and then, you get it all perfect, feeling good, take a picture of it, have your resident leader in the pit whose job it is to deal with electronics also take a picture of it, and that is their job before every rehearsal to go and make sure it looks the same every single time.
I think also if you're looking for something, your starting mixer, reach out to some of the sister schools in your district. I know we had one and we've lent it out to, they probably still have it, other schools, so they could use it as we've upgraded.
And just like Claire said earlier, always ask your theater friends. There, 9 out of 10 times, there's something in a black box that's not in use anymore that might have 8 channels, but if you have nothing, something is better than nothing.
And they might have a kid in the theater program whose job it's been to take care of all that stuff for the past 2 years, who would love nothing more than to come talk to you for an hour straight about how everything works, that really is interested in how it's been going. The next step for mixers would be then a digital mixer, which is the ones you're going to see on those bigger programs. You have the person sitting there with the iPad. There are now like purely digital mixers that don't have any knobs or buttons on the front. Those can be functional. I'm a fan of, I think if you're talking easier to use, I do think it's sometimes easier to still have access to some of those things right away on the front, because then you're really relying on your connection to that mixer to be able to do anything if you don't, have that emergency pull this slider up, pull that slider down. There are as many digital mixers as there are people with opinions about them. So I'm not going to say one way or another of like there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but there are definitely options in everybody's budget.
I I'll be opinionated there then, Claire. I'll give you the right and wrong answers. If you're getting your first digital mixer, get something with a fader. Hands down, get something with a fader. There are these mixers out there like the X Airs, there's the Yamaha racks, things like that, where you have to be connected to the iPad or the computer, uh, or the mixer will not work. I experienced this last season at finals here in the state. Luckily, I had another school like just leaving the field. I was able to run and grab internet cable and physically hardwire my laptop and throw it onto the field just so they could have a mixer. Highly recommend you get something with faders. The Yamaha TF1, the Allen and Heath SQ, I believe it's the 3, all fantastic mixers. They all have physical faders. They've all got buttons. They can do everything you want and then some more. But definitely gonna harp. Definitely use something with a fader.
When I've been looking at like mixers for our program, I think one of the biggest things I look at is like the number of inputs it has and making sure that you have the right number. Like if you get like a 12 input mixer, that's great, but there's really no room for growth on that. Can you speak at all to like what, how many inputs do you need? And then like, I think there's ways to do sub mixes and things like that too if you need additional. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think especially having been in a tiny program and a much bigger program that is now starting to, I wouldn't say outgrow our mixer, but definitely start to hit the limits of our channels. At Cascade Union, we are on a 32 channel. We're on a Behringer X32, which is definitely now in that realm of not a model I would say to buy brand new if you were going to get a new one. But I hope that ours continues to last forever because so far she has been a trooper. And that 32 channels will probably be more than most programs would need if you are sub, I'm going to say like 100 members in your band. That obviously depends. Some people have more members in their pit versus in their band or vice versa. But really, in that level, like if you figure every marimba has two microphones on it most of the time, every vibraphone's going to have one. If you have a drum set, that is as many or as few mics as you want to put on it. And then into things, are you miking your rack at all? Are you miking soloists? Do you want to have your synth split into multiple channels, or do you want to have them all grouped together? The big thing that we used to do is that we might have to start doing again if we get any bigger is running our drum set into a small analog mixer and then running that in as one channel into the main mixer. That's a really easy way to condense down channels. Some people also do that with their marimbas where they'll have things chained together and then have things maybe kind of like either pre-mixed or all run into the same channel. Maybe it's all the high microphones and all the low microphones. There are a bunch of options of how you can do that. You can do whether it's an analog snake of some kind where you're just physically combining channels together. If you're running like Ethernet cables, there are stage boxes that will combine channels together that then you can run an Ethernet cable in, and then that breaks back out on the back end of your mixer, which you can then break out into less channels if you wanted to. Lots of options for how you can combine things. I'd say 32 is going to be a pretty stable number for most people. If you have a really, really small program that you anticipate not getting way bigger in the future at any point, 16 is definitely functional, but you will start to feel the edges of that pretty quickly. If, again, just knowing every marimba is two, you have five marimbas, that's 10 channels on your mixer right away. But I definitely think that 32 is a pretty safe number. Most of them nowadays, I think most of the ones Zach mentioned also, have options that if later on you want to go back in and add more channels, they have ways to expand them as well.
Yeah. Just to kind of keep going off of that, and get a little more specific. The Yamaha series, if you're looking at the TF1, I believe there's only 16 channel inputs on that mixer specifically, but you can get a stage box for it, which is, I believe the TIO boxes run around 1,200 a piece. Uh, and that'll increase your channel count by 16 just like that. So you can actually throw that box out on your synth or out on the track somewhere, have everybody plug right into there, and still put your mixer away from where it needs to be.
Yeah, so speaking about that, like I think one of the things that maybe a lot of listeners will be hearing is like, okay, two mics per marimba, one mic for every vibe, cables everywhere. Can you talk about stage boxes and snakes and things like that, and the importance of making sure there's cable management? Because I think that like, in this you have to set up in a couple minutes, right? So maybe just a general idea of like, okay, what does a snake do? What does a stage box do? And why should we make sure we're using them?
So I think the easiest analogy for what a stage box is think of it like a power strip. You have your part that has to plug into the wall, your mixer. You also have the other end that just kind of sits out on the floor and collects all your Christmas lights or your marimbas. Um, so you just have to match each cable to the mixer end, and there's always going to be numbers on those. Uh, Downside to that system is it can get heavy quick. If you've got a 32 channel mixer and you're wanting a 32 channel snake to make sure everything has a plug and everything gets used, well, then you're physically carrying 32 channels of cable inside of this snake. From there, you can get a little smaller. We've got the DB25 cables and breakout system. Those are the old DB25 computer connectors that some of our band directors might be used to. Uh, I, I don't know if we're still using those for anything network outside of audio, really. But those can do a max of 8 channels. You can get either breakouts that can connect physically, or you can get like a stage box of 8 channels. From there, you can get even smaller down into Ethercon and Ethernet boxes. Those have a limit of 4. So we can only do 4 channels. So in the case of marimbas, you can only do two marimbas per cable. So we're trading out this giant big box of 32 cables, extension cord to drop in the middle of your front ensemble or wherever it needs to go. and we're just essentially running one, two, maybe three cables, depending on what system you're running, and we can talk about how to figure out which one to pick later. But the less cables you have on the ground, the quicker your setup will be.
And the less breakable. That if we think about those cables also, I think one of the big reasons a lot of people are starting to move I've been looking into moving us over to ethercon for that reason, because an ethernet cable is a lot less expensive to replace than one of those giant analog snakes. That we have two 16 channel snakes that it's almost like the issue with replacing or repairing is every single channel on that is still an individual cable running the inside of most of those snakes for our specific analog snakes there. And so if it gets bent, twisted, like some other way, hurt, it's much more difficult to repair or to go in and fix where that channel goes to. And you do start to end up, we have a couple dead channels on ours right now because they're the thing that gets pulled out and pulled back in every single time. The other thing with cable management is I think we sometimes take for granted the daisy chaining that most of us do. It does add a little bit of a cost to your program in that you are using physically more cables than you would otherwise. But when we talk about daisy chaining, it's that idea that if I have 4 vibraphones in a row, this one on the end has one cable that plugs into vibraphone 2. They have 2 cables, one that runs across, one that their mic plugs into that plugs into vibraphone 3. They now have 3 cables, 2 running across, one with their mic, and then vibraphone 4 has 4 cables, those 3 that go across and one coming in, and then all each student has to do is plug their cables into the person next to them, and then that plugs in at the end to wherever that landing place is, whether that is a stage box, whether that is a snake. If you're a really small program, maybe that is just at the end, that's what goes into the mixer. I do kind of advise having some point between your students plugging cables in and your mixer inputs themselves, because that's also still ultimately cheaper to replace than if you yank out of an input on accident on your mixer. That's going to be a much more expensive solution than, the cable gets broken on the end of that 4 input stage box or something. So that also, daisy chaining can make it more expensive because instead of buying 4 cables, you're buying 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way down the line, however many you do. So that can be the creative thing we have to do every season, is how do we daisy chain this using the least cables possible? And then that does give the option of, student pulls away and forgets they're plugged in. I had such a good track record for so long, and then in 2 seasons I had 2 cables break because students somehow forgot they were plugged in or something and go to pull away and a cable gets snapped. So still cheaper than replacing the input on your mixer if that happens to that situation, but that can also be a is it worth it or not for my program situation of do we want to chain all the way across.
And then cable ties and zip ties, I mean, invest in those, right? Like make sure you're strapping things down and
Zip ties are your friends.
Color code everything before you put them onto the instruments. That you don't want to get that vibraphone 4 where it has 4 cables going across, get it all tied on and realize nothing's color coded yet, and you have to go manually figure out which cable connects to which end, which is fine on 4 cables and way less fine on a bundle of 10 cables coming off that side of the marimba line. So color coding tape, you can get a nice fun pack of 8 different colors, and that's just everything gets color coded all the time. You can combine colors if you're well, I only have 5 colors and I have all these different people. Someone gets to be red and yellow. Someone gets to be blue and purple.
Well, that was really great information from Zach and from Claire, especially when we're talking about the sound from the very, very beginning level.
yeah, I agree. That was some really good information, and I just think there's so much there. We're going to go ahead and split this podcast into 2 episodes. That way, we can dive a little bit deeper into this content, into this information for all your directors and staff members out there to really just digest the whole scope of the sound design.
All right, we'll see you next week.